There's a certain kind of person in this world who is universally liked. Polite, helpful, cooperative, reliable. A person who never argues, never rejects, never pushes back. And on the surface, it seems like a virtue, but beneath that pleasant smile, there is something darker, a quiet suffering, a hidden fear, a psychological storm that no one ever sees. These are the people who cannot say no, not because they don't want to, not because they don't know how, but because the word no feels dangerous. To them, a simple refusal doesn't feel like a choice. It feels like a threat, a risk, a potential explosion that might cost them a relationship, a reputation, or their sense of safety. Most people assume people pleasers are just nice. But the truth is far more complex. People who can't say no often carry deep emotional scars. Today, we dive deep into the psychology behind this behavior. Not just the conscious reasons, but the invisible programming beneath them. The dark psychology, the emotional chains, the hidden motives, the learned survival strategies. Because people who cannot say no are often the ones who have never been allowed to say no in the first place. Let's begin. People-pleasing rarely begins in adulthood. It begins in childhood, at the exact moment a child realizes that love can be withdrawn. A child who learns that their needs are too much, that questioning is disrespectful, that saying no leads to punishment, anger, or emotional withdrawal, quickly understands one thing: compliance equals safety. In many homes, children are not taught boundaries. They're taught obedience. If a child grows up with emotionally unpredictable parents, narcissistic caregivers, highly critical families, parents who demand perfection, caregivers who guilt-trip or shame, adults who explode at the slightest disagreement, the child learns an early survival rule: my needs don't matter, their needs matter more. This transforms into a lifelong programming. I must keep everyone happy. I should never disappoint anyone. Saying no will make them angry. I don't deserve to take up space. If I refuse, I'll be rejected. By adulthood, this programming becomes so automatic that the idea of saying no triggers anxiety, even when the situation is harmless. Dark psychology also plays a role. Many parents unconsciously weaponize guilt. They teach the child that refusing help is selfish, that setting a boundary is disrespect, that not agreeing is betrayal. Thus, no becomes not just a word, but a perceived act of aggression. This creates adults who are terrified of upsetting anyone. Adults who apologize excessively. Adults who are afraid to express their needs. Adults who feel responsible for everyone's emotions. People who can't say no are not weak. They are survivors of emotional conditioning. Underneath the behavior of chronic yes-sayers lie three emotional forces. 1. Fear. Fear of conflict, rejection, disapproval, abandonment, being judged, being disliked. To them, saying no feels like a social risk. Their brain automatically imagines worst-case scenarios. What if they get angry? What if they leave? What if they think I'm selfish? What if this ruins everything? Their bodies react with stress, faster heartbeat, tight chest, nervous tension, simply at the thought of refusing. 2. Shame. Shame is deeper than guilt. Guilt says, I did something bad. Shame says, I am bad. People pleasers often carry childhood shame. I'm responsible for other people's feelings. I must earn love. I don't deserve to say no. My needs are less important. Refusal becomes tied to self-worth. 3. A trauma response. Some people say yes automatically because they learn to freeze or fawn. A fawn response is a trauma reaction where a person tries to avoid harm by becoming overly accommodating. They soothe others to protect themselves. This emotional wiring is so strong that they say yes before they even think. Their mind has learned that pleasing others reduces emotional danger. Thus, the inability to say no is not politeness, it's survival. People think people pleasers have simple motives. They're kind, they're cooperative, they're helpful, but dark psychology reveals more complex, hidden motivations, often subconscious. 1. The need for control. Ironically, many people pleasers use compliance as a way to control outcomes. They believe, if I keep everyone happy, nothing bad will happen. If I don't upset anyone, everything will be peaceful. This is emotional management disguised as kindness. 2. The desire to avoid accountability. Some people use niceness as a shield. If they never cause conflict, no one can blame them for anything. Yes becomes a protective layer against criticism. 3. Identity dependence. Many have built their entire identity on being good and helpful. Saying no threatens that identity. Without pleasing others, they don't know who they are. 4. Unconscious manipulation. Not all people pleasers are innocent. Some use niceness to gain approval, earn validation, secure loyalty, appear indispensable, avoid abandonment, build emotional leverage. This isn't malicious, it's survival-based manipulation. They learned that being needed is the safest place to be. 5. Fear of power. Some people refuse to say no because they fear what power means. Power implies responsibility. Responsibility implies risk. Risk implies the possibility of failure. So they stay in the passive comfort of agreement. People think people pleasers are harmless. But beneath the surface is a complex mix of fear, control, shame, trauma, and unspoken strategy. Not all people who can't say no look soft or timid. Some are highly competent, successful professionals, high achievers, leaders, caregivers, perfectionists, the strong friend everyone relies on. These individuals look confident, but internally, they are collapsing. They say yes to avoid disappointing others, protect their reputation, maintain harmony, avoid being perceived as weak, keep up their reliable image. They carry the weight of everyone's expectations. Their calendar is full, their mind is exhausted, yet they keep going, because stopping feels dangerous. High-functioning people-pleasers often don't realize they're burning out until it's too late. Their bodies break before their voice does. Insomnia, chronic stress, decision fatigue, resentment, emotional numbness, depression. These are the people who say yes with a smile, but cry alone at night. The world is not kind to people who can't say no. There are 3 types of people who exploit them. 1. The entitled. These individuals expect compliance. They push boundaries because people pleasers don't push back. 2. The manipulative. Narcissists, toxic partners, controlling bosses, they seek out people who can't say no. They feed on compliance, emotional labor, self-sacrifice, silence. They reward obedience and punish independence. 3. The unaware. Some people exploit people pleasers without meaning to. They assume your yes is sincere because you never say otherwise. And the people pleaser stays silent because confronting them feels terrifying. The psychology here is simple. People who lack boundaries attract people who benefit from boundarylessness. People pleasers think they're being kind. but many predators interpret it as weakness. This is why chronically agreeable people often find themselves in draining friendships, one-sided relationships, unfair workplaces, abusive dynamics, because saying yes all the time is not generosity. It signals that your boundaries can be ignored. People who can't say no eventually suffer psychologically. 1. Resentment. At first, they feel helpful, but over time, resentment grows. They start thinking, "I'm giving everything, and no one sees it. Why am I always the one sacrificing? Why does no one care about me?" But instead of expressing anger, they suppress it. 2. Identity loss. Constant compliance erases their sense of self. They don't know their preferences. They don't know their desires. They don't know their boundaries. They don't know who they would be if they stopped pleasing others. 3. Emotional exhaustion. They carry emotional weight that doesn't belong to them. Others' problems, others' expectations, others' emotions, others' workloads. Their mind becomes a battlefield of unspoken needs. 4. Collapse. Eventually, the emotional system shuts down. Burnout, depression, anxiety, dissociation, social withdrawal. The person who never says no becomes a ghost of themselves. Every people-pleaser eventually reaches a breaking point. It usually happens quietly. A simple request pushes them over the edge. A small disappointment feels unbearable. A minor conflict feels catastrophic. And suddenly they realize they have given away their life one yes at a time. This realization is painful, but it's also the beginning of rebirth. People who can't say no start noticing how many people take advantage, how often they betray themselves, how little energy they have left, how empty they feel, how much resentment they carry. And then the truth hits. Saying yes to everyone else means saying no to yourself. Learning to say no is not a communication skill. It's a psychological transformation. It requires healing, fear, shame, guilt, trauma, childhood conditioning, attachment wounds. It requires unlearning, the need to be liked, the belief that conflict is dangerous, the habit of self-abandonment, and it requires building self-worth, boundaries, accountability, emotional independence, confidence. The first no is always terrifying. It feels like rebellion, like betrayal, like danger. But then something amazing happens. Nothing catastrophic occurs. The world doesn't end. Good people understand. Toxic people get exposed. Your mental health improves. Your energy returns. You rediscover yourself. Saying no becomes less a threat and more a declaration of self-respect. People who can't say no aren't weak. They are wounded, trained, conditioned. Their silence, their compliance, their yes-saying. These were survival strategies. But survival is not the same as living. Saying no does not mean you're selfish, you're rude, you're unkind, you're difficult. It means you know your limits, you respect yourself, you refuse to live in fear, you choose honesty over resentment, you choose growth over approval. The psychology behind people who can't say no is complex, but the path out of it is simple. Respect yourself enough to disappoint others. Healing begins the moment you choose yourself. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can say in life is a single liberating word: no.